start recording here as well, and we jump back into Unreal. So hello everybody and welcome back to fedibull.com, the platform, for artists, designers, visualization people, everybody who has a passion for 3D computer graphics in real time and real-time ray tracing and animation, everything that is related. Welcome and be part here of something that is really fun. And again, Fedibull, I believe in passion and I believe in sharing knowledge and free resources. That's why I'm saying at the beginning, always go to my website and fedibull.com. You can download all those tutorials plus project files and assets for free, absolutely for free, so you can always test everything for yourself, of course, as well. That's why I'm going to do that. So first of all, in this tutorial, I am going to show you now how to use a camera, a physical based camera, and how are we going to set it up and how I usually use it in production, and how to use it as a director of photography, how to operate this camera, and how to find cool spots, and also how to set up the camera with the right lens, with the correct f-stop, and so on and so forth. All this is going to be covered in this tutorial. And I hope you have been watching already all the other tutorials, because there is a lot. I am talking about the lighting setup in a studio environment, then models, assets, how to texture them, how to bring them in, material creation, and so on. So I really enjoy doing this, and yes, I love it. I think this package here from Unreal, from Epic Game Studios, is just amazing. I love it, what they did. It's just like a dream came true for me as a designer, as a visual artist and lighting artist, photographer, animator, and so on. But enough blah blah blah, right? So let's jump straight into the fun part, camera work. How am I doing camera work? So when you go, of course, here on the left tab on the cinematics, you can clearly see that there is a camera icon, and you can drag and drop this into your editor. So first of all, if you're here in the editor and you drag and drop it and you don't see the icons, press the button G, and if you do so, whoa, look at this, there is a big camera already here. And then you already know that you can rotate by pressing the E button on your keyboard, and then you can see you can move it around, and that's the physical based camera. You can also see here it's called Sign Camera Actor 1, right? So you can see this here as well in the preview, and this little video here, a little view box on the bottom right, is basically the view from this camera. So you look through this camera and see what is going on. Another thing here maybe I would like to mention, it's pretty cool sometimes if you want to snap the rotation angle, for instance, like in a 10 degrees radius or whatever, and then you can see you're rotating the camera to a 90-degree angle. Of course, you can change this if you click in here to 5 degrees or whatever, and you can totally turn it off, and then it's just, going without snapping, and you have a free floating camera. Another thing I want to show immediately, so this is basically W, you move it, nothing special here. E is for rotation, and R would be scale, but I never touch actually the scaling. As I mentioned before, you also can see it here. I don't touch the scaling at all, it's not needed. So what am I going to do now is I would like to show you how I am going to set up this camera to have a really nice view to this chair. Okay, so first of all, this is the perspective in the editor, in the viewport, and you can go through and navigate as normal, right? And you can position your camera in here and just pull it back and then find a view. And you could also try to find nice angles if you like this workflow, and look always here through basically the film back preset, where this little icon where you look through the lens of your camera. But I am a big fan actually to operate directly through this camera. And if you click on the upper left here on click perspective, you can also see that we have one placed camera, which is called Sign Camera Actor 1. So it's another actor in your level or in your scene. And so if you click on it, now you operate through this camera. Okay, so now you actually see pilot active is, so to speak, Sign Camera Actor 1. And you will notice immediately that the lighting changed. So if I kick this camera out, this lighting is kind of already different if I'm looking through this camera. And the reason why is because when you look this Sign Camera Actor, you activate that particular camera, and all the exposure settings and everything is based on the settings of that specific camera. You also can see it's a little blurry here already, and I will get into this why it's blurry and why it's not sharp, so sharp and not in focus. So we'll go straight through that. So I prefer pick and select the camera you would like to work with, and then look through it, and then make sure it's really selected here in the world outliner as well. And then let's go through our settings. So first of all, when I type this in under the details section, I make sure that because I have post-process volume already turned on with the retracing, I make sure that I don't have another retracing through that specific camera. And as you can see, you could control the retracing completely independent and separate through each camera actor as well. But in my particular case, as I showed you before, and let's have a closer look here on the left, you can clearly see that there is a post-process volume and the retracing is turned on here. And when I jump on my Sign Camera Actor 1, then you can see that my retracing is turned off because I already have it turned on and I don't want to do it twice. So this is the first thing to do, to maybe double check. Also make sure here in the search details, where you can find all the options of your Sign Camera Actor, make sure you don't have any filter in it. Like here, if you have any letters or anything, it filters it out in all for all the options you have here for your camera, and it's quite a lot. You have so many options, based on this Sign Camera Actor. It's crazy. It's really, I love it. I mean, it's great because it gives you so many opportunities. But like I said, let's get started with the basics and let's work through how I set it up. So first of all, my camera is usually movable. Because especially if I'm doing camera animation work, cinematic camera work, it's movable. That means, my camera is not just static. I will move the camera, and therefore when I'm setting animation keys through the sequencer, I want to make sure that my camera is also set to movable. Then the next thing we just go through is really like, okay, what options do I have? So enable look at tracking. That basically means if something would be animated like this sphere and it moves from one frame to the next and it's changing the position, you could basically tell in the Sign Camera Actor, hey, I want to track this. This is a very cool feature, and I will also make in-depth video tutorials for each simple feature, right? But in this one, it's a generic physical camera setup. I would like to show you what I'm looking the most and what is the most important for you to get started and to have a really nice understanding of the camera settings. The draw, debug, look at tracking position is also what I will cover then later. It's basically helping you to visualize and to see like if the object is really tracked, what you want to keep in focus. There is also speed options, etc., etc., and there is offset things, but we don't really want to go into this at this point. The next thing I really want to cover is like film back settings, and this is very, very generic. Like on a DSLR, you have usually a 16:9 chip, and that chip sensor is also set here to a 36mm, which is usually based on every digital camera you purchase, and you might know it doesn't matter if it's a Canon or like if it's any other brand you're using, a Nikon, and this is very specific, but you could also change this to a Super 8, to a Super 16. It's basically the digital film sensor. You are trying to capture your source, your digital pictures, so on the chip itself. But this has nothing to do, and this many times completely mixed up with the camera and the lens you're trying to use. So don't get confused. And if you want to shoot with the regular DSLR, let's keep this with the basic settings for now. Then the lens settings, you have a universal zoom, and it's preset for you, and you can also make this custom. You could basically say, I would like to work with the 1 millimeter in the minimum focal length, right? So this is basically the lens we are talking about. And I want to increase this, and I want to say I have a 1 millimeter to, I don't know, a 1000 millimeter lens, which is incredible awesome. I mean, the digital lens world is amazing. If you know a little bit from real time, from real photography, lenses are very expensive. And if you would like to have those lenses and you want to buy all of them, those are available on the market, you would have to invest quite a lot of money, especially expensive lenses. That gives you the opportunity to go down to shoot with, for instance, an f-stop of 1, which is amazing. Shooting for low light scenarios, this is killing it, and going up to an f-stop like, I don't know, 24 or 30. So this is very important to understand about lens settings. I set it up to 1 millimeter to 1000 for now, so I have all the options. I can go in and pick then lenses however you like it. So the blade count is basically how many blades you have when you're closing the shutter. I like to have 5. The reason why is I show it later too in the bokeh effects. I like to have like a 5 bladed form shape. I don't know if it's called like pentagon right now, the shape of form. Just like let me know if you can figure it out, but I just like the form and shape to have it shown the bokeh effect that is caused through a blade count of 5 blades when the shutter is actually closing the camera. Now it becomes very, very interesting, because in my previous tutorial I tried to explain also that I like to use everything in manual settings, and also the focus method is set to manual. And you might notice that the focus is basically, what am I going to put in focus with my lens? Is it basically here in the background my logo, or is it the chair, or is it the sphere? What is it? And if you set it to manual, you see also here you have tracking or to none. If you set it to none, then you see how it's changing everything, right? But if I set it to manual, I can actually pick here the sample, and I can select in my scene what I would like to see in focus. And when you do that, this is pretty cool. You see also here the focus distance, because that is measured from your camera lens to the pivot point. I'm assuming here now, pivot point of that geometry. But it's super cool, because with this being said, you can actually identify where is your focus point. And when you check the draw debug focus plane, then you can also see when you change that here in the manual focus distance, the focus distance plane with the color purple here is going to show you where should your focus be set, or where would you like to set your focus. So, and this means the chair right now is in a distance from 264 units, okay? And yeah, that basically tells you, like, if I'm setting up my lens this way with 270 units, this should be here my focal point. So, and everything before and after is going to be blurred out depending on the specific lens you have been choosing. And also, of course, the f-stop you have been choosing. That is very important. So if I turn this off right now and I keep it at manual, you see now I have actually my chair in focus. But if I move my camera, you can clearly see now it's changing, and my chair is out of focus. Even the sphere here is out of focus. And the reason why this is very, very clear is because now the focal point is changing. Even if I'm moving my camera far, far back, look at this. Of course, the sphere gets more and more blurry, and you can clearly see what is going on. So to demonstrate this for you, I'm going to turn off now the focus method and set it to none. So you see everything is sharp. That means there is no real physical lens or camera in this particular case, or you're shooting with, you know, a wide lens, and you know, the f-stop is also set up very high, like at 24 or something like this. But anyways, to demonstrate you a little bit this you know, camera focal point and the depth of field, this is very important to work with this setup. I think that's the core. It's like super important. So I type in camera here, that I find it easier. And then I go here to focus method and set it to manual. And as you can see here, depending on where I change my focal point, this is going to be sharp and the rest of it is going to be blurred out. Now, let's scroll down more and more here to this camera, because you can clearly see then that though that specific camera setting has a current focal length, and this means this is the actual lens. So you're shooting right now with a 35mm lens. So if I change this to 80, you can see that for all in the sudden I'm looking through an 80mm lens. Now what you also notice is, of course, now I can push back my camera a little bit. I mean, look at this, it looks already beautiful. Now I already also see some bokeh effects on the spherical reflections. What you can clearly see here, it's looking really, really nice. You see also how cool it looks when you, of course, change your lens and you know how to get a specific effect and a depth of field effect. Then you really can see like, whoa, this looks great, because like even the floor is blurring out in the background, but the bokeh effects on the sphere here is actually looking really, really cool. You know, cinematic shots, a lot of in filmmaking, when I was working, of course, for other major studios in the past, and did a lot of camera work, layout, etc. It's basically filmmaking and cinematic shots is approached by shooting wide open usually and getting a lot of depth of field. That makes shots like look much more photoreal. And also, you know, with that specific technique, you can guide the audience as a director of photography, so to speak, what should be the real focal point of your final picture. It's kind of like an artwork. I really have to say, photography, camera work, it is not just kind of an artwork. Let me please rephrase this. It is an artwork itself. I mean, it is. It's very, very important to have really good looking pictures. It's very important to have a really good layout, previous work, and of course animation work. And if you don't understand this and if you don't have enough experience, then of course you will notice, whoa, if my camera animation or my direction, my camera work isn't really looking good, it will affect the work dramatically. So anyways, as you can see, when I look on my camera here, I'm shooting right now with a 2.8 in the f-stop, and I can change this to an 1.8 or to an 1. And then as you notice what is going on, it's of course clear. You open the f-stop, okay, you open basically the iris of the camera, the whole, and more light is bouncing through. That means if more light is going through the lens, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. But at the same time, when you do this, the focal point is even much more sensitive. That means a lot of stuff is going to be blurred out. So if you change this to 4.5, or let's make it dramatic to 24, and now you see that the exposure is of course off, and I would need to go in and change here my exposure. And just in this particular case, I just go crazy here and add whatever, a compensation, just for the demonstration purpose. Usually don't do this with the real cameras. Let's say 24, 22, 23. Yeah. And I mean, look at this difference now. We basically just changed the lens, and if you're going to change the lens, then you can clearly see that for all in the Sadhana, even if depth of field is on, but you're losing all the depth of field, and the reason is because you are shooting through an 80mm lens. That is not really the important key, but you're using an f-stop from 24. And that means the hole you're letting, from your lens light through is very, very tiny in reality. And so everything gets more and more sharp. And even if you would like to assign or apply depth of field, you're losing it because you're shooting with a lens that keeps everything sharp. Okay, so like I said, if you want to create like a nice bokeh effect, depth of field, maybe 4.5, 2.8, 1.8, of course, 2.8 would give you a really good option, but you need to change then, of course, the exposure. And as you can see, as I do it like here, you can see how you affect the overall brightness of a shot by not even touching any light. So the light intensity is always the same, but all you do is basically changing the film sensitivity of your camera, or so to speak, yeah, the f-stop and everything. So everything is related, of course, and unfortunately I can't give you here a photography class. That's not my objective, but it gives you a rough overview to understand the basics of the sign camera act in Unreal and how you can actually use it. So if I don't go with manual exposure compensation, I want to go down here and then really look at options from the camera itself, as you can see here. And those are components I didn't even mention yet. But of course, if you are going to change the shutter speed, and you see it live here, then it's affecting also the exposure. So that means shutter speed, for instance, here is in 1 second. So if you have a 120th of a second, the shutter speed is very, very fast, right? It goes like in an instant of a second, and it opens the lens and it shuts it down, and it's a very short time light is going through, and the shorter this light is, so if you go to 240 or 600, the shorter the time is, light can go through your iris of the lens, less light is bouncing through, and therefore it gets darker, right? So in real time or in reality, if you go usually below, if you're shooting manually with your hand below a 60th of a second, you might have a camera shaking it, and your picture will get blurry and it's not steady anymore because it's too shaky. And therefore, in reality, you might want to shoot like with a shutter speed from 120 or something like this. But depends really on what are you shooting. Is it sports photography? Do you have extreme motion in your shots, or do you not have motion in your shots? And according to all the scenarios, you are going to pick a specific lens because you want to get a specific look. You also need to consider the lighting scenario, how intense the lighting is, and therefore you also want to consider then the film sensitivity itself, which is the ISO. And as more sensitive it is, as brighter it gets, because you make the film much more sensitive. In the digital world, it's great that even if you crank it up and you have a crazy film sensitivity from like, let's say 100,000, you don't get any more noise in it. That's crazy. That's crazy good actually for the digital world. When you would shoot with real film, that would be a dream. It would not happen, right? But anyways, you also can see here that you can adjust, of course, then the aperture again. But in this case, the f-stop we have been controlling in the upper settings here. And yeah, this is the maximum f-stop or minimum f-stop you are allowing to put in, but we also have been setting this up with those values before. So this is basically the beginning. This is how it is. You also have, again, lens flare settings, how intense you want to do it. You can tint those things, and those are kind of like really cool effects on top of it as well. You have, of course, image effects where you can apply vignetting. So a vignetting effect is basically dimming down in a radial effect, like shooting through this lens. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, you can change the intensity. You can also add grain. You know, this would be the real film noise, what you use from real shooting on film, what you would see on a film or in theater. But in the digital world, you know, it's also a post-process. You want to avoid this at the beginning, and you don't actually want to add a lot of post-process at the beginning. Of course, you also have then white balance. You're very familiar with this. If you're shooting with a digital camera, then you know for sure that you have a white balance, and you can set it up so it doesn't look too cold or too warm. And this is here the same. You can totally adjust and identify what's going on in your shot. And what else? You can tint it on top of it. It's similar to what you have in the post-process volume, what I showed in my other tutorials before. And of course, in the saturation, you can go in and change then, you know, the global saturation of your shot. You see, if I put it to 0, it's black and white. If I crank it up to 2, it's like super saturated. But those things are also in terms of contrast, gamma changes, all post-process settings you can do in real time. And I have to say, this is awesome. I mean, this is something, a dream came true for me when I saw basically that Epic Game Studios was releasing the ray tracing, and they combined the NVIDIA RTX technology and DX12 here. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this. I have to jump in immediately. So anyways, this is, so to speak, the beginning and the raw setup. You have, of course, many other options here, which is super cool. I don't want to cover every single, you know, feature and option here, but the most important I was covering for this to get started, to basically put a camera into your scene and to understand, wait a minute, if this is a physical based camera which can also act like a film camera, so you know, where you would have a rotation blade instead of just, you know, a DSLR where the shutter basically closes and you know with the iris, it's also different. But it gives you the option that you can do so many things. It's amazing. I love it. I was like, and I'm still super stoked. I can't even believe it that this dream came true. And as you can see, when you move through with your camera and your depth of field is set, is turned on, I mean, look how beautiful that is. Because if I move back my camera and my floor is, you know, for instance here in focus, and then I move over or I move my camera forward, and now the chrome ball gets maybe blurry and the next one is sharp, I get this really cool looking depth, and the depth of field is looking so well. It's just like, it's amazing. And as you can see, as you play around now, the chair is in focus and I see the textures and everything is in real time. That's amazing, especially for doing camera work, camera animation, previous work, because you can do previous camera animation work super fast and quick here in real time, which is just for me like it's amazing. I can't stress enough about it, and like, or can say much more about it than this makes me super happy. So, and yeah, what else to say? Last but not least, of course, what is very, very important to work with the physical camera and doing animation work is then in the cinematics working also with the so-called sequencer. But the sequencer itself is also something I have to create another video tutorial, and I'm going to introduce you in my next session how the sequencer works and what you can do. And of course, if you like this introduction to a physical camera and how it works, then I would say please hop over to my homepage fattybull.com, and you can download that level. You can download the entire project file for free, and you find all other assets for free. Very, very important, because I believe in free giving and free trainings and free sessions. I'm an artist, and I always had a very, very strong passion for this, and I feel like sharing and loving is the best what you can do. And if you have any questions or if you need any help on your current project, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help you out. Just give me a call or send me an email. Hop over to my webpage fattybull.com. If you liked this introduction video, then please, of course, put on the video the thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. And of course, I would love to read your comments, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And yeah, I hope to see you over at my tiny little homepage fattybull.com. And that being said, have fun with Unreal. It's amazing. Have fun with the cinematics, have fun with shading, lighting, ray tracing, and the camera work. And that being said, happy retracing, and hopefully see you soon in my next video room here at fattybull.com. Thank you so much, and talk to you later. Take care. Bye.